The night was quiet inside the little house. Lucy, 12 years old, had drifted to sleep on the couch with a book still resting against her chest. At her feet, Max, her loyal German Shepherd mix, lay curled up, breathing steadily in the hush of midnight. Max stirred before Lucy did. His ears twitched first, then his nose lifted, catching something strange in the air. He stood quickly, muscles stiff, sniffing again. His instincts told him something was wrong. Smoke. A faint trail curled along the ceiling at the end of the hall, creeping into the living room. Max's low growl rumbled in his throat before he barked sharply, a sound that cut through the silence. Lucy stirred, coughing lightly in her sleep. She blinked open, tired eyes. "Max?" she murmured, confused. "What's wrong, boy?" He barked again, rushing toward the hallway, then back to her, pacing with urgency. Lucy sat up straighter, finally noticing the smoky haze drifting closer. Her chest tightened, coughs racking her small body. Panic began to creep in, freezing her where she sat. Max darted to her side, grabbed at the blanket draped over her legs with his teeth, and tugged hard. His message was clear. She had to get up. She tried to stand, wavering unsteadily as the smoke thickened. Then came the sound, the dreadful crackle of fire from the kitchen. Lucy's eyes widened at the orange glow flickering against the walls. "Fire?" she whispered hoarsely, her voice cracking. "Oh no!" She staggered toward the front door, but before she could reach it, the ceiling above groaned. A beam snapped and crashed down with a shower of sparks, blocking the path in a wall of fire. Lucy froze, coughing violently, tears streaming from the smoke burning her eyes. Max barked furiously, teeth bared at the flames as if he could fight them off. He darted toward the back door, slamming his body against it, barking and clawing until paint chipped away. The door rattled but didn't open. He spun back to Lucy, who was on her knees now, struggling for breath. Her hand trembled as she reached out weakly toward him. "Max, don't leave me." He growled, determined. Grabbing her sleeve in his teeth, he pulled with all his strength, dragging her inch by inch across the floor toward the back door. Lucy coughed and gagged, but she clung to his fur, letting him guide her. The smoke alarm finally screamed to life overhead. Outside, a neighbor watering his plants glanced up, startled by the barking that rang out sharply through the night. His eyes widened at the smoke billowing from the roof. "Oh my God, fire!" he shouted, fumbling for his phone as he sprinted toward the street to call 911. Inside, Max clawed furiously at the bottom of the back door. A sliver of cool night air seeped through a crack. He shoved harder, muscles straining as he wedged his body against it. With a loud snap, the latch gave way, and the door swung open. The sudden rush of air fed the flames behind them, but Max wasted no time. He hauled Lucy through the doorway, dragging her limp body into the backyard. She collapsed on the grass, choking, gasping desperately for fresh air. Max circled around her, whining, licking at her face to keep her awake. She clutched at his fur weakly, managing a whisper through the rasp in her throat. You saved me." He pressed close to her side, panting hard, ears twitching as sirens began to wail in the distance. Minutes later, fire engines and an ambulance roared up to the house. Neighbors spilled into the street, watching in shock as flames devoured the roof. Firefighters rushed forward, hoses uncoiling, shouting orders. 2 paramedics spotted Lucy sprawled in the yard, Max standing protectively over her. They ran toward her, one carrying an oxygen kit. "We've got her!" the first paramedic called, but Max snarled as they approached, baring his teeth, hackles raised. He stood over Lucy like a shield. "Easy, boy," the second paramedic muttered, holding his hands up carefully. "He's protecting her." "We don't have time for this," the first snapped, trying to kneel. Max lunged forward, snapping his jaws inches from the man's arm. His growl rumbled like thunder. Lucy stirred at the sound, lifting her hand weakly. Her voice cracked, barely audible. "He stays. Please. Don't take him." Max whined at her words, pressing his body closer to hers. The paramedics exchanged tense glances. "All right," the second said firmly. "We'll work with the dog. But he doesn't leave her side." "Fine," the first muttered, frustrated. He quickly slid the oxygen mask over Lucy's face, all the while with Max's golden eyes locked on his every move. "We need to get her in the ambulance now," the second paramedic urged. They lifted Lucy onto the stretcher. Max immediately leapt up beside her, planting his paws against the edge as if ready to climb on top of her completely. "Whoa. He's not gonna let her go," one of them muttered. Lucy's weak fingers curled into Max's paw. "Please, don't leave him," she begged. The paramedic sighed in defeat. "All right, but he stays at the foot. If he snaps, he's out." Max gave one sharp bark, as if to seal the deal. They loaded Lucy into the ambulance, Max climbing inside before anyone could protest further. The doors slammed shut, sirens wailing as the vehicle sped into the night. Inside, Lucy lay pale against the stretcher, oxygen mask hissing gently with each breath. Max lay across her legs, his eyes sharp on every hand that touched her. One of the paramedics adjusted the IV line, speaking softly to the dog. "We're helping her, buddy." "You gotta trust us." Max didn't growl this time, but he didn't relax either. His head stayed low, eyes watchful, ears pricked for the slightest sign of danger. Lucy reached out with a trembling hand, brushing her fingers across his fur. Her voice was muffled through the mask, but the words were clear enough. "Good boy. Stay with me." Max laid his head gently across her legs, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but never closing. He wasn't going to rest until she was safe. The ambulance thundered through the city streets, carrying them both into the uncertain night. The ambulance tore down the city streets, its siren howling through the night. Lucy lay pale beneath the harsh lights, the hiss of the oxygen mask steady against the rise and fall of her chest. Max hadn't moved from her legs since the moment they loaded her in. His head rested on her knees, his body tense, golden eyes sharp and unblinking. One of the paramedics checked Lucy's vitals. "Her pulse is weak but holding," he said, glancing nervously at Max. "We'll stabilize her once we get to the ER." The other paramedic nodded. "Just don't touch the dog. He's not letting go." When the ambulance screeched to a stop outside the emergency room, the rear doors flew open. A team of nurses and doctors waited with another stretcher, ready to rush her inside. "Burn victim, smoke inhalation," one of the paramedics called. The nurses moved quickly, too quickly for Max. The moment they reached for Lucy, Max sprang up, teeth flashing, a vicious growl rattling his chest. "Whoa! Whoa!" one of the nurses cried, stumbling back. "That dog's dangerous!" "No," Lucy croaked weakly through her mask. Her hand pawed at Max's fur, holding on with what little strength she had left. "He's my Max. Don't take him." The supervising doctor frowned. "We can't have an animal in the trauma ward. It's against protocol. Restrain it or get it out of here." Max's growl deepened, his body crouched low, ready to fight anyone who dared separate them. His entire being radiated warning. Touch her and suffer. The paramedics hesitated. They had seen enough on the ride to know there was no prying him off without a fight. "Doctor, he dragged her out of that fire," one of them said quickly. "She wouldn't be alive if it weren't for him." "She's terrified. We can treat her with him here, at least until she's stable." The doctor looked unconvinced, but Lucy clutched Max's ear weakly, her eyes begging. Her voice cracked under the mask. "Please, don't take Max. Please." The doctor sighed in frustration. "Fine. but keep him under control. If he bites anyone, he's out. The nurses exchanged nervous looks as they pushed Lucy into the ER, Max trotting alongside, pressed close to the stretcher. Every movement of the wheels made him tense. His eyes darted between every stranger's hands, his body ready to spring if they tried to take her. Inside, the bright hospital lights were blinding. Alarms beeped, machines hummed, and the air was thick with antiseptic. Nurses swarmed, attaching monitors, preparing IV fluids, moving with urgent efficiency. Max stayed plastered against Lucy's side, refusing to move even as doctors leaned over her. When one nurse reached to slip the oxygen mask off for a moment to adjust it, Max let out a sudden sharp bark, snapping his jaws close enough to make her yelp and snatch her hand back. "Okay, that's it," the nurse snapped angrily. "That animal can't stay in here." Lucy's voice, weak but fierce, broke through. "He stays!" She coughed hard, clutching Max's fur. "I need him. He saved me. He won't hurt me." Her words hung in the air, fragile yet unshakable. Even in her frail state, she fought for him. Max pressed his head into her chest, whining softly, as if he knew she was fighting to keep him near. The supervising doctor raised a hand, silencing the protest. "Enough. She's stable for now, thanks to that dog. Let's work around him." Grudgingly, the nurses adjusted. They moved carefully, announcing their motions before reaching toward Lucy so Max could see. Every time a hand hovered too close, his growl rumbled low, a constant reminder of his vigil. Hours stretched on. Lucy drifted in and out of consciousness as medication and oxygen worked through her system. Whenever her hand slipped from Max's fur, he nudged it back into place, refusing to let her lose contact. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't drink. He only stayed pressed against her side, his ears flicking at every sound, his eyes locked on her face. Word spread quickly through the ER about the dog that had dragged a girl from a fire, and then challenged every nurse and doctor who tried to pull him away. Some whispered admiration, others irritation, but no one dared force him out. At one point, a young intern crept too close, murmuring about needing to take blood samples. He reached for Lucy's arm. Max's sudden growl was deep and furious, so primal it made the intern freeze, hand trembling in midair. Lucy stirred, whispering hoarsely, "Max, it's okay. They're helping." She stroked his head, her fingers shaky. He calmed slightly but still didn't take his eyes off the intern until the needle was out and the tray removed. Through the long night, Max never once left his post. Not when the machines beeped alarms. Not when Lucy coughed until she shook. Not even when a nurse tried to tempt him away with food. He ignored everything except her. The supervising doctor eventually came to check again. He stood watching Max for a long moment before speaking quietly to Lucy. "You've got yourself quite a protector," he said. "Most dogs would have run from that fire." Lucy, pale but a little stronger now, smiled faintly under her mask. "He's not most dogs." She stroked Max's ear. "He's my best friend." Max wagged his tail once, slow but steady, his eyes never leaving hers. The doctor nodded. "Then we'll make an exception for him. As long as you're here, he can stay. But he listens to you, understand?" Lucy nodded, relief flooding her tired face. She leaned against Max, whispering, "We're together, boy." "We'll be okay." Max gave a low, contented rumble, laying his head across her chest as though he finally believed she was safe. For now. Outside the ER windows, dawn crept into the sky, washing the horizon with pale light. Inside, Max still stood guard, ready to fight anyone who dared come between him and the girl he had saved. By the second day in the hospital, Max had already become a legend in the ward. Everyone knew about the dog who pulled a girl from a burning house, and then refused to let anyone separate them. Some staff admired him, but others saw only problems. Hospital rules were clear. No animals in trauma wards. Infection risks, liability, safety. By those standards, Max had no business there. But Max didn't care for rules. He cared only for Lucy. Lucy was still weak, her chest aching with every breath, her voice raspy from the smoke. But every time a nurse came in, she reached for Max, whispering to him, anchoring herself to his presence. He would press his head into her hand, tail giving a soft thump, and her pulse would steady. The nurses noticed it too. The machines that beeped and tracked every vital told the story clearly. Lucy's heart rate was calmer when Max was close, her breathing steadier. When he stepped away even briefly, the numbers spiked again. But not everyone was convinced. Late that morning, a stern administrator entered the room with a clipboard tucked under her arm. Her suit was crisp, her expression colder than the fluorescent lights. "This cannot continue," she said flatly, staring at Max like he was an intruder. "A dog in a hospital bed is a violation of every health code we have. He needs to be removed immediately." Max lifted his head, his ears pricked, sensing the threat in her tone. His lips curled back just enough to show teeth. Lucy sat up as much as she could, coughing before forcing the words out. "No, he's not leaving. If you take him, I'll leave too." "Lucy," the administrator began, her voice stern, "you need medical care. You could relapse without it. The dog can't stay." Max barked once, sharp and loud. The administrator flinched, her pen slipping from the clipboard. Lucy's weak hand tangled into Max's fur. "He saved my life," she rasped. "He stays. If he goes, I go." The room filled with silence, heavy and stubborn. The administrator pressed her lips into a thin line, then finally turned to the supervising doctor. "You're responsible for this decision," she warned. "If something happens, it's on you." She stormed out, her heels clicking down the hall. The doctor looked at Lucy, then at Max, who had settled back down but still kept his eyes fixed on the door. "You've got quite the fighter on your hands," he said softly. "Both of you." Lucy smiled faintly through the oxygen mask. "We fight together." As the hours passed, more confrontations followed. A nurse tried to change Lucy's IV bag, but Max growled so fiercely she couldn't get close. Lucy had to stroke his head and whisper, "It's okay, Max. Let her help," before he finally allowed it. Even then, his eyes never left the nurse's hands. At lunchtime, an orderly tried to set down a tray and accidentally knocked Lucy's cup of water. The moment it spilled across the sheets, Max jumped up with a bark so loud the man nearly dropped the entire tray. "Good grief!" the orderly gasped, clutching his chest. "That mutt's a menace." "He's not a menace," Lucy snapped, her voice stronger than before. She reached for Max, calming him with a touch. "He's my guardian. He knows when I'm scared that was true." Every time Lucy coughed too hard, Max's ears flicked back and he pressed closer, nudging her until she steadied. Every time she drifted into uneasy sleep, he lay across her legs, weight heavy, grounding her in the real world. By evening, frustration boiled over. A group of nurses gathered outside the room, whispering heatedly, "This isn't safe. He nearly bit me when I checked her vitals. What if he goes for a patient in the next bed? We should sedate him and remove him." The words drifted through the door. Max's ears twitched, his eyes narrowing. A low growl built in his chest, rumbling like distant thunder. Lucy stirred, hearing the sound. "Max, don't." "They just don't understand." She stroked his fur, whispering, "They don't know you like I do." "But I do. You'd never hurt me." He lowered his head against her chest, sighing through his nose, but his body stayed tense. Moments later, the door opened. The head nurse stepped in, her jaw set. "Lucy, we can't keep him here any longer. The staff is uncomfortable, and it's against every rule we have." Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but she lifted her chin stubbornly. "If he leaves, I leave. He saved me. I won't let him think I'd ever abandon him." The nurse hesitated, clearly torn. "Sweetheart, you need this care. Without it, you could—" Max stood suddenly, tall and imposing, his teeth glinting in the harsh light. The growl he let out made the nurse step back instinctively. Lucy put her arm around his neck, coughing through her tears. "Please, don't make me choose." "He stays." The nurse's sternness cracked. She exhaled heavily, shoulders slumping. All right. I'll talk to the staff, but you have to keep him calm. We can't have him snapping at everyone." Lucy wiped her tears, nodding quickly. "He'll listen to me." "He always does." She stroked Max's fur, whispering, "Right, boy?" "You're my good boy." Max licked her hand, tail wagging once before he settled back against her side, his growl fading to silence. That night, as machines beeped softly and the ward quieted, Lucy drifted into a deeper sleep than before. Her hand stayed tangled in Max's fur. He didn't move for hours, not even to shift positions. His eyes stayed open, glowing faintly in the dim light, watching every shadow and every footstep outside her door. And when a janitor's cart squeaked too loudly in the hall, Max growled low again, reminding the world he was still there, still ready to protect her. No matter what. Days passed. Each one felt long and uncertain, yet through all of them, Max never left Lucy's side. He ate only when a nurse slid a bowl under the bed. He drank only when Lucy coaxed him with trembling fingers. Most of the time, he stayed curled against her legs, his ears flicking at every sound in the room, his eyes locked on her face. The staff slowly learned how to work around him. At first, they kept their distance, announcing their movements carefully whenever they entered. Some were still wary, moving stiffly under his watchful gaze. But as hours stretched into days, something changed. They began to see what Lucy saw. One afternoon, Lucy's breathing grew ragged, and the alarms on her monitor beeped frantically. A nurse rushed in, ready to call for a doctor. But before she could, Max barked sharply, pawing at Lucy's shoulder, nudging her upright just enough to help her catch her breath. His bark had brought the nurse running, but his instinct had steadied Lucy. "She calms when he's close," the nurse admitted quietly, watching as Lucy stroked Max's ear and her heart rate smoothed back to normal. Another day, a young nurse dropped a clipboard by accident. The sharp clatter made Lucy jolt in her bed, her eyes wide with panic. Max immediately pressed against her chest, whining softly, licking her hand until her fear eased. The nurse saw it all, her cheeks flushing. "He's not just a pet," she whispered. "He's her anchor." Word spread again, this time not of danger, but of devotion. The head nurse who once wanted Max gone returned a few evenings later. She stood at the doorway, watching quietly as Lucy slept, her small hand tangled in Max's fur. The dog's chest rose and fell with steady breaths, but his ears twitched at the faintest sound. "He doesn't rest," the nurse murmured to the supervising doctor beside her. "He won't let himself?" The doctor nodded. "He's guarding her." "He thinks it's his job." The nurse folded her arms, still torn but no longer angry. "Maybe it is." That night, Lucy woke with a soft cough. Her hand reached instantly for Max, who lifted his head and licked her cheek. She whispered, "Don't ever leave me, okay?" He laid his head back down, his tail wagging once against the sheets. By the fourth day, Lucy was strong enough to sit upright without help. She coughed less, her color returned, and she even managed to laugh when Max sneezed after sniffing too close to her dinner tray. The nurses smiled from the doorway, surprised by how bright her laughter sounded. "She's healing faster than expected," one of them remarked. Maybe the dog really is helping." The administrator returned once more, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She stopped short when she saw Lucy smiling for the first time in days, her hand buried in Max's fur while he lay across her lap. "I came to enforce the rules," the administrator admitted reluctantly. "But it's clear he's part of her recovery. I'll file the exception paperwork." Lucy's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Max thumped his tail hard against the bed, as though he understood. From that point on, Max was no longer seen as a problem. He became a quiet fixture in the ward. Nurses brought him bowls of water. Orderlies greeted him gently when they passed. Even the doctors softened, muttering that maybe he had earned his place. Lucy grew stronger each day, and Max never left her side for a moment. He walked carefully beside her when the physical therapist coaxed her out of bed for the first time. He stood tall when the doctor checked her lungs, only relaxing when Lucy patted his head and whispered, "It's okay, Max. They're friends." And slowly, the tension that once filled every corner of the ward faded. Instead of complaints, staff members began to smile when they passed the room, some even pausing to scratch Max's ears. He accepted their touch reluctantly at first, but eventually wagged his tail. Lucy noticed it all and grinned. "See, Max? They know you're a good boy now." He licked her hand, as if to say he already knew. The day of discharge finally arrived. Lucy was bundled into fresh clothes, her face brighter and healthier than anyone had dared hope when she first arrived. A nurse wheeled her chair to the entrance, Max padding proudly at her side, head high, tail wagging with each step. The staff gathered to see them off. Some clapped softly, others waved. The head nurse bent down and stroked Max's ear. "Take care of her, boy," she said quietly. "But I think you were already planning to." Lucy leaned down, wrapping her arms around Max's neck. "We're going home, Max." Together, Max barked once, sharp and triumphant, as though declaring victory. He trotted beside the wheelchair out into the sunlight, his shadow long and strong beside hers. The fire had taken her home, her things, the sense of safety she once had. But through it all, she hadn't lost the most important thing. Max had saved her, guarded her, fought for her, and refused to let her go. And as they left the hospital doors, Lucy knew one thing with absolute certainty. No matter what came next, she and Max would face it side by side. Together.